No, should we upload it now?
I'm going to wait for the chat. I don't want to...
Oh, right. Oh, cool. I'll just hang around here as well. Yeah.
So are you well? Have you had COVID and did you have COVID?
No, I haven't had COVID. No, managed to avoid it.
Your housemates did or something?
Yeah, all my housemates did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, we've been having a slightly weird and potentially a bit stressful time on the Timber Accelerator Hub.
Okay.
To be honest. Hello.
Excuse me, are you presenting next?
Yes.
Question. Is it new build or to cover maintenance as well?
No, not both. It's more material focused, so...
Just material focused?
Yeah.
Basically, just to make sure this is relevant to...
it's into retrofits and absolutely.
So basically, I'm in the process of procuring material supply
For retrofit?
just for maintaining the buildings at the moment.
Okay.
Retrofits as well. This is just for maintenance, so this is
Okay, it's quite building fabric focused.
It's building fabrics.
Yeah, so paints and finishes, insulation. This is structural timber. So maybe sit in for the first 5 minutes, and if it's red crap, then you can. Sorry, mate, we've got a couple of late ones.
Hello.
We're okay too.
Hiya. I think you scan it on there. Yeah. Hiya. Sorry. Yeah, I've got my slides on here.
I've already got slides for this session. Is it different to the ones we've already got?
Yeah, so we've got...
I think you're missing 2.
Yeah, so that will be first 5 minutes, then...
this one.
Then that one, then this one. And
so these are on top of the...
Yeah.
Right, okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's because it's just quite difficult to make this whole system work.
Yeah.
They've only given me one laptop, and you see everything we do with it. So
Yeah, it all comes up on
cool.
the screen straight away.
I want that one. Oops. With File Explorer. So I have to think about this a little bit because I'm a Mac person.
Me too.
Likewise.
Right, which one am I? Future build, multiple roles.
Yes, that's it.
Just chuck it on the desktop for a second.
It's probably worth taking... What's that future build there as well?
Yeah, it's a new version of... I think it was already there.
Well, there you got the second, the third on that one. So that was done.
Could you just check which ones you already have?
Does that look right?
That looks good, yeah. I think Katherine sent 2 versions, but I think you guys already have it, so it should be okay.
Okay, so if you go back to the folder where the other ones are...
Well, the only 2 I had were Anton and...
Oh, yeah, so
there's another one to go in, isn't there?
Yeah, so...
Let's just pop that out. That's your one. File Explorer. Really do have to think about this. Future builds.
So the PowerPoint, if you've got PowerPoint on here, then it's the lower one of those 2.
Cool. Let's just pop that out, and then I shall pop this. Let's double check your one as well in the PowerPoint. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Cool. So what I should do, close that. Right, what have I got? Got that one.
Thank you, thanks for that.
So I've got that one, 4 speakers and the holding slide. Cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. And then when we switch between them...
Who's speaking first?
So, that's number 1, that's number 2.
I think what we'll do for the moment, we'll open up with that slide.
Yeah.
Basically for this, all we're doing, because we've only got the one machine, that will be it. At the end of each one finishes, if you escape, just go down to the PowerPoint, it'll bring up your selector. Whoever's next, just click on their slide, and then you'll get the little PowerPoint thing, hit that, and that'll expand it up. It's quite straightforward, to be honest.
Excellent.
So sorry, that's the first.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. Well, we'll see what Katherine. See how. Yeah. Either way, it doesn't really matter because we'll come out and we'll get the right presentation out anyway. So.
How long? Tell you what I'll do.
Yeah.
I'll leave it on this one. That slide for the moment.
Yeah.
And then when you decide, because you can go in and just grab the audio as you want it.
We'll just press escape. And
you just escape, and you'll hit on the PowerPoint bit at the bottom. Pick whoever's going to do it. Open it up, and there you go.
And then audio-wise,
audio-wise, you've got the lectern. If you're obviously presenting from the lectern, there is a clicker there to go backwards and forwards for everybody.
Nice.
And there's 4 handheld microphones. So when you do question and answers or debating or however you're going to run the session, it's all there. I control all the volumes for everything, so you don't need to turn things on and off.
Is it these mics for the speaker?
Yeah, if I could ask you to present to the front row, because the more level I get, the better I can amplify it. If it's quiet, one of our last speakers whispered and I couldn't even amplify it. Unfortunately,
right, yeah. So talk as if you're talking to the people down there.
Yeah. Well, only to the front row. You don't need to shout at them, but if you talk quietly like this, I'm not going to get you. Just up a little bit, and we'll be as good as gold.
Uh-oh.
And the presentation comes up.
It's new at the moment, isn't it?
Yes. Oh yeah. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want your slide up now?
And there's a clicker to take you backwards and forwards, but yeah. Yeah, with Mimic it's the same because it's easier that way. If you do notes that way, then it gets a little bit. Because notes tend to be one slide in advance.
They're all loaded into PowerPoint, so they're all ready to go. So then we just press escape and then choose the right one.
Oh, okay. So do I do that in between each one?
Should we show? So you just go escape and then
Oh, okay.
hover over that, and then it comes up.
Pick whichever one you want.
Yeah.
Click on it.
Do you want to put that one?
Yeah,
Put that
You
one
might
on
as well
now.
put that one on now.
And then you just make sure you hit that,
okay.
and that's it.
And then there's a clicker there to go through it.
Yeah,
so.
sure.
What? Go and get a glass of champagne, girl.
That's a long session.
I know. You didn't see that. No. I don't think anyone want to listen to us for that long as well. So little.
You know the order, it's
Yeah, Joe, Mark, Anton. I haven't got any bios for them or anything, but I'll just say if you could just introduce yourselves.
scribble notes or anything.
Thank you. I haven't got any. Just hoping a few people ask questions. Because I haven't thought of any.
It's only 10 minutes.
Yeah. Are you staying here? agreed or not. Why I just nicked that from Healthy Buildings, the blue.
It's quite nice blue, isn't it?
Didn't know if I was in trouble.
I'm not bothered about this thing anymore.
Too old in there too. Is there? Oh yeah. Oh, and Jackie. Yep. Yep, okay. Hi everyone. Hello. So welcome to, where are we? Keynote Stage 2. So for the next 45 minutes, this session is by Alliance for Sustainable Building Products. So we're going to be talking about net zero and natural materials. So these gentlemen here will be presenting for about 10 minutes each, and there'll be opportunities to do Q&A afterwards. So I'm just going to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about ASBP and what we are. But just to introduce today's speakers, we have Joe Giddings up first. So he's lead of the Timber Accelerator Hub. We have Mark Lynn, who's MD of Eden Renewables, Innovation and Thermafleece. And then we have Anton, apologies if I got that wrong, from Keim Mineral Paints, and he's the business development manager. And as you can see, this is what they're talking about. Joe's going to be talking about our Timber Accelerator Hub. Mark, Lynn, about the multiple roles of insulation from a natural fibre point of view, and then the health and carbon benefits of natural paint. So, Alliance for Sustainable Building Products, we've been around for quite a while now. We're a not-for-profit, mission-led membership organisation, really all about demonstrating sustainable building products in use. We have a number of pillars there which we organise our work streams around, and what you'll hear today sort of goes through all of them. So resource efficiency, whole life carbon, technical performance, ethics and transparency. This is who we are. So there's 7 of us now in the team, led by Simon Corby. You'll see Joe there, who's part of the team as the Timber Accelerator Hub, and Mark as well, who's our vice chair. So we have 120 members and counting, and to celebrate the fact that we got to 100, we planted 100 trees to Caerphilly woodlands in Wales. Quite a mix of membership, architects, specifiers, just across the supply chain really, trade bodies, academia, really educated and sort of bunch of people. So we have lots of different activities. We have our awards, and we have our awards showcased on a stand, and I'll give you the number of that in a minute. We've recently set up a Healthy Paints and Finishes group, which Keim are members of. We had our Healthy Buildings conference last week, which was really interesting, talking about the latest findings in terms of buildings in use and their health impacts. We have the Timber Accelerator Hub, which Joe will talk about it in a minute, which is looking at the whole thorny issues of fire and insurance. I lead a Reducing Plastics in Construction group, so do have a chat to me about that. That's both looking at packaging and then products which are made of, construction products which are made of plastic. We have a natural fibre insulation group, which Mark leads, where a number of the manufacturers and suppliers join together in a collaborative manner to provide advice and expertise there. We do a lot of work in embodied carbon and EPDs, a lot of resources on our website on that. and I also lead the circular economy reuse area, and we're about to start a project looking at steel reuse. I just wanted to mention this project. We've recently won this. So this is looking at packaging in construction, plastic packaging in construction, just trying to work out what types of packaging are used and then what we can do about it in terms of either sort of reducing it or making it better managed at end of life. We've also got a BioCirc project ongoing. This is coming to an end. Mark may be talking about this, I'm not sure. But we're developing prototypes with a very sort of hard waste material to deal with, polyester duvets, and I'm sure many of you have got duvets and don't know what to do with them. So hopefully we'll be able to turn them into insulation soon. So do get involved with us. Join as a member, sign up to our mailing list, get involved in one of our groups that I've said, or do come along to one of our webinars. We do hold them quite often. There's our contact details of all the different people that are involved in ASBP and our team. And we are on stand E64, so come and check us out. And then you can see all our award finalists, all the information about them on C72. And just to shout out to all our other members and supporters that are here today at Future Build, so you can see all their different logos there. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jo, she says. There we go. So, Jo, the floor is yours.
Thank
10
you.
minutes.
Thanks, Katherine. Yes, so my name's Jo Giddings, and I'm Project Director of the Timber Accelerator Hub, which is one of the research projects at ASBP. I'm just going to present a kind of brief overview of what that is and what the project aims are and what we've done so far. So the Timber Accelerator Hub was set up to investigate the major challenges and barriers that mass timber specifically is facing in the UK at the moment. And these challenges are currently preventing the wider uptake of this set of products. The two challenges that we were focusing on specifically are to do with insurance. So that's construction insurance of a project whilst it's on site, and then the kind of buildings insurance of the completed asset, and then fire safety and the regulations as well. Alongside this, or the way that we were working was to establish a kind of network of different stakeholders that are each kind of seeking to address these challenges in their kind of field, and then to enable a more kind of cross-industry collaborative approach to tackling those. And then to identify any gaps and initiate and support further work that we thought was needed to overcome those barriers and enable the much wider use of mass timber. And when I say mass timber, I'm referring primarily to the 4 products that you can see at the top of the screen there. So mass timber really just refers to the group of products that includes cross-laminated timber, glue-laminated timber, Dow-laminated timber, and laminated veneer lumber as well. So it's any product that has layers of timber kind of laminated together into a more solid structural element. The project was funded by Loudis Foundation and Timber Development UK and Swedish Wood, and there were a number of other partners that were involved. So those are the 2 primary barriers that I mentioned: fire safety and the regulations, and insurance. So just a brief history of where the project came from. So a couple of years ago, Gardner and Theobald ran a series of webinars called the Mass Timber Office Forum, and it was a year-long kind of series of events that brought together a lot of major developers in the UK to discuss openly in a forum why it was that they were struggling to use mass timber. And it identified those 2 primary barriers. There are others to do with supply and other things, but it identified those 2 things as the major kind of barriers that were stopping mass timber being used. That was a series of conversations, really, or events, online events. It was during the lockdown. And from that, a series of key stakeholders came together to form a kind of knowledge-sharing group called the Mass Timber Know-How Group. And this was made up of insurance brokers, developers, fire engineers, structural engineers, architects, So really right across the project team, all the key players. That again was a series of conversations, and what they wanted to take from that was more solution-focused work. So taking a talking shop and turning it into a project that would find and identify solutions to these problems. So that was where the ASBP came in with the help of Louders Foundation and others. And then we started working towards specific outputs through these three work streams. And the way that we did that is we run kind of stakeholder-specific groups. So we have a developers working group where a number of kind of key private developers discuss and try and come up with solutions together. We have a mass timber property insurers forum, which is a webinar really aimed at increasing confidence of insurance providers in this set of products. So trying to increase understanding of mass timber amongst that key stakeholder group. I mean, a big part of the problem really is that mass timber is really just seen as a risk by the insurance market. And that's understandable. They work off data, and mass timber is a relatively innovative and new kind of product. So we wanted to try and just increase understanding amongst insurance providers and ultimately bring down the cost of insurance for mass timber. So yeah, as I mentioned, a big part of that was just coordinating a network and bringing everyone together. There's a huge variety of different initiatives and projects out there that are seeking for mass timber to be more widely used, and we aim to kind of create a hub where all of those things were connected. We've run 4 of our mass timber property insurance forums so far on different topics. So how to safely design a high-rise mass timber building. So we got Wall Thistleton in to present some of their work. Fire safety in mass timber buildings is a key kind of sticking point with the insurers. And so we had Sam Liptrop from OFR Consultants present the current best understanding. Repairability and durability are two other big topics that insurers need to know about, because they're really looking at the kind of building as an asset, how you repair that and how durable the material is. And we've got further sessions planned for this year with topics to be confirmed. And yeah, so I mentioned the developers working group already. That's quite a lively group. We meet once every 6 to 8 weeks, and Argent, British Land, Bruntwood, Grosvenor, Landsec, Lend-Lease and Stanhope are all part of that. And exploring a couple of solutions at the moment. So one thing is just conveying to government what the problems that these developers are facing. So we're drafting a letter at the moment to send to government, and then on a more practical level, we're exploring the idea of a kind of common rule book for mass timber commercial buildings at the moment. So what that would do is kind of set out essentially best practice of mass timber offices and what good looks like, because at the moment the insurers are basically saying that many different types of project come to them, and it's very difficult to understand what best practice mass timber detailing actually is, because it's relatively new to them. So this would be a statement of best practice that we could present to the insurers. And some developers are also exploring the formation of an alternative risk transfer vehicle. So that's a kind of captive insurance company where they form an insurance company together to self-insure, and then they won't have to go through the kind of traditional insurance market. At the same time, we're involved in advocacy work. So the government has recently established a policy working group for timber in construction. So part of their net zero strategy is about increasing the use of timber in construction. They want to increase forestry in the UK generally, and they see construction as a key commercial driver of this. So we've joined a policy working group that DEFRA, BAYES and DLUC have started in December. So they'll be meeting all throughout this year, and we'll be involved in those conversations, ultimately to present a series of policies to government ministers that could be implemented that would try and resolve some of these barriers. So that's me. I don't know if that was 10 minutes or shorter, but it was a brief overview.
No, you're shorter actually.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I'll pass over anyway. Is it Mark?
Mark next. Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe. So lots of exciting stuff happening there. I'm sure you can grill him in a bit if you'd like to. So I'll pass over to Mark now to talk about insulation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to touch on, I've got 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to sort of quickly cover an awful lot of topics within the time. So I'm chair of the UK Natural Fibre Insulation Group, which is a collaboration of the main natural fibre insulation brands that are active in the UK, and you can see them on the screen here. Our aim really is to educate and inform and promote the market for natural fibre insulation through work with all stakeholders, including policymakers. It's worth noting that natural fibre insulation in the UK is a fraction of a % of the market currently, although it is growing at significant double-digit rates. But if you look at major economies in Europe, such as France and Germany, it's 10% and growing. So any notion that this is a category that's a niche within a niche just isn't the case. And I would certainly like to think that natural fibre insulation in its various forms will take its rightful place in the overall mix of insulation choices, certainly before the decade's out. The Natural Fibre Insulation Group produces a range of training materials and briefing notes, and you can see some here. So if you want to learn a little bit more after the event, if you go on the ASBP website, there's a Natural Fibre Insulation Group section within there, and there's certainly a lot to learn from that. So when you're looking at natural fibre insulation, you essentially have to consider the multiple roles. So insulation isn't just a one-dimensional material. I think we've become accustomed to think of nothing but U values, but of course insulation has an impact on the sustainability, health and well-being, fire performance, acoustic performance, comfort and buildability of the fabric itself. And when you look at insulation in that broad sense, then natural fibre insulation is essentially a no-brainer, because for all-round performance, you're not going to get a lot better. And certainly as our focus away from solely on U values and operational carbon towards embodied carbon, then you'll start to really see the benefits of natural fibre insulation, and the value of those benefits will become greater and greater. So just starting on thermal performance, natural fibre insulation has got higher K values than some PIR or PUR foams, but that's not the be-all and end-all. You know, you can achieve the same U values. You just need a thicker building fabric to achieve that, but that's by no means a negative thing, particularly when you're looking at the embodied carbon within the building fabric and the benefits that the natural materials bring, that I'll just touch on in a minute. You've then got to also look at annual energy savings, which is a very good measure when we're looking at retrofit, to be able to demonstrate very good performance, and allows us to provide a rationale for using relatively thin layers of natural fibre insulation to make improvements to existing properties. So essentially what we're doing is getting a very good solution that's deliverable across the board, rather than focusing necessarily on the perfect. Then you look at phase shift, which is all about the way that natural fibre insulation has a very I was going to say Goldilocks, but essentially a Goldilocks thermal mass, which means that the heat penetrating the building fabric during the peak periods doesn't reach the internal space until a number of hours, typically 12 hours after the peak heat. So when you're looking at thermal performance in those three aspects rather than just the U value, then there's a very clear rationale for using natural fibre insulation. Then we look at embodied carbon. So the typical natural fibres used in insulation would be hemp, wood fibre, sheep's wool, sisal, straw, flax. So anything that's cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin, keratin, all those natural materials are about 50% carbon, biogenic carbon, which in turn is equivalent to about 180% CO2. So a kilo of natural fibre sequesters about 2 kilos of CO2. So that biogenic carbon is a very good mechanism for offsetting any input energy and to allow the building fabric to act as a carbon store in the same way that timber does. And that's something that in the UK presently perhaps we're not given enough value to. But if you look at what's happening in France, for example, where they're adopting a dynamic LCA approach and they're giving value to that biogenic carbon, then you can see a big driver for natural materials in construction. And my sense is that if regulation doesn't make that happen in the UK, then I think the market's going to drive that way. So I don't think it's something that we can sit back and think that it just happens over there. Environmental product declarations are important for a third-party verification of the quantified biogenic carbon within the products themselves. And if we haven't published it yet, there will be a list of verified EPDs for the natural fibre insulation brands that are within the natural fibre insulation group, and that will be published on the ASBP website fairly soon. We have them for Thermafleece, for all our sheep's wool products. Humidity regulation. I chaired a series of events during lockdown where we asked experts to talk about indoor air quality. And aside from formaldehyde, humidity was mentioned in every presentation. That's simply because humidity and moisture are such strong influencers over indoor air quality, and having natural materials that can breathe, that can truly breathe, is a very good way to help regulate humidity levels within the building fabric, notwithstanding the fact that most moisture has to be removed through ventilation. Breathability essentially provides a mechanism to get rid of the residual amount. I think there was a famous paper that's getting on a bit in its years now, but I think it was produced by Kingspan, that they said the breathability was irrelevant because 90% of moisture in a building was removed through ventilation, which, even if you don't argue with, says, well, what about the other 5%, which is a significant mass of water over a period of time. So what happens with natural fibres is that they want to adjust their moisture content to be in balance with the humidity of the surrounding air. Surrounding air temperature drops, humidity increases, and the fibres start sucking moisture out of the air, and they're constantly pulling the air away from the dew point as temperature drops. And it's that sort of behaviour combined with the vapour openness that makes natural fibres and insulation truly breathable rather than just vapour open. VOCs, natural fibre insulation, is a very good material to use for a source control strategy to indoor air quality, because the VOC emissions from the materials themselves are very low, and you've got examples here of thermally bonded sheep's wool and flexible wood fibre. Acoustic absorption, here you've got a 31 kilo sheep's wool, and it performs as well as a Rockwool 45 at about 70% of the density. So these are the absorption coefficients, 0 being the worst and 1 being the best, and very similar level of performance there. Natural fibre insulation is generally a Class E, so it wouldn't be used above 18 metres, but there's plenty of applications where it is suitable, and it complies in that case with all relevant sections of the building regulations. Natural materials burn in a predictable way, and they char in a way that other man-made materials don't. That's the contact details. Sorry for the whiz through. Just one last thing about the BioCirc project that we're involved in, and this is essentially turning wasted duvets into insulation. And we have to be mindful of the fact that every resource is finite. We've sort of we've become misguidedly of the opinion that renewable resources are infinite resources, and every resource is finite. So, whereby we can use natural fibres and natural materials in many areas of construction. In addition to that, we have to utilise every possible resource that we can and encourage circularity. So whereas maybe waste polyester duvets don't do all the same things that a natural fibre insulation does, they fulfil a need in a world of ever-shrinking resources. So we've been involved in this project for 2 years now. It's due to finish in the summer. So that's me concluding my presentation. I've no idea timing, but I'll answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Mark. Lots of questions I'm sure there'll be for Mark. Anton, would you like to take the floor? There you go. Okay, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Katherine. Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to see so many real people, actually, for a change. So without further ado, I shall get cracking. My name is Anton Boekhoudt from Keim Mineral Paints. I'll just go through a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So some basic stuff, what is a natural paint? So we'll ask some questions and get you thinking. A comparison of the ingredients between natural paints and conventional paint systems. The impact of colour pigments as well. VOC content. Health benefits of natural paints. The carbon benefits of natural paints. And also look at some examples of projects where reuse or retrofit has been applied to make the most of embodied carbon in existing buildings, which is, I think, an area where natural paints can have a really good, powerful solution. So what do you think a natural paint is? When people talk about paints, the first thing that may come to your mind is colours, but there's many other things when we're looking at natural products. I've listed some of these things here. You might think of others. A natural paint might be inorganic. It could be low VOC. Could be breathable, non-toxic, colour stable, biodegradable, no hazardous waste, strong health benefits, and it works in harmony with the environment. And credentials and certification validate those facts as well. Manufacturers will have ethical principles. So it's quite a long list there, but it's a question to you guys as well. You know, what do you think? What are you looking for in a natural paint? So it's just to get you thinking. There's many, many different aspects that you might need to consider to make the verification of what is a natural paint. So we'll just look at some of the ingredients and a comparison between natural paints and man-made paints. This isn't an exhaustive list, but I've listed here a few. There's three main areas. You've got the carrier, the binder, and the colour. So with natural paints, the carrier tends to be water. The binder can be a mixture of things, linseed oil, lime, clay, milk protein, or potassium silicate. The colour can be earth oxide pigments, minerals, or plant-based. And then when we come to conventional man-made paints, the carrier can be solvent and or water. The binder, now this is where it really changes. The binder in conventional paints tend to be alkyd emulsions, polymers, oil-based binders, latex binders such as PVA, vinyl, styrene, 100% acrylic. So these are all the bad things really that you need to look out for. Colour-wise, it tends to be man-made colorants. With regards to colour pigments, you've got two options really. Mineral, which is inorganic, and modern, which tend to be organic. So with mineral or inorganic colour pigments, a nice picture there with a selection of colours. Highly colour stable and fade free. Ultraviolet resistant, so this is where we get the resistance from ultraviolet light, and the colours will stay the same, guaranteed. Beautiful range of natural colours, chemical free, and also solvent free as well. And a flat matte natural colour. When we come to modern organic colour pigments, these tend to be created in a lab. There's a heavy reliance on petrochemicals and or the petrochemical industry. They can contain harmful VOCs along with the actual binders themselves, because all of these products are mixed together anyway, so you're contaminating the pigments as well. Colours can fade because they are man-made, they're not UV stable sometimes. And they can be less opaque and have less covering power, which ultimately means you'll need to apply more coats of conventional paint system to achieve the same coverage and opacity and solid colour. So you can end up using more paint than with a natural paint system. You can have neon pink, but there will be some downsides as above. So yeah, the difference is you've got a wider range of colours, more on these sort of neon brighter sides, but they are going to have issues. So VOC content, or volatile organic compounds, for anybody who doesn't know. Different manufacturers will quote different VOC content levels. Natural paints are generally low VOC or less. So the coating industry bodies have certain opinions on this, so it does vary, and manufacturer to manufacturer will quote different figures. All I would suggest is do your research, check VOC levels yourselves, ask for data sheets, EPDs, sustainability information. Responsible paint manufacturers will provide all that information to you, so if that is a key consideration, you can make an informed decision. So the health benefits of natural paints: it's safe to apply, healthy, safe ingredients, low or zero VOC, mould and algae resistance, a water-based or waterborne product mostly, chemical-free, low or no odour, so also non-allergenic for people who suffer with allergies and can be affected. Improved air quality is quite a key thing, which ultimately equals improved happiness for the building occupants, we hope. Not necessarily a direct health benefit, but it's a side effect, particularly with Keim mineral paints. Because of the ingredients and the products we use, they are inherently incombustible. We do have products rated to A2, S1, D0. I won't go on about it here, but do come and see us at our stand if you'd like to learn more. So the carbon benefits of natural paints. When I was researching this, there was a quote by Sir Norman Foster that really struck home with me. It makes a lot of sense. He said, "Those buildings which are adaptable will survive. That is the ultimate sustainable building. One you can recycle rather than destroy, throw away and start again." And I think that speaks a lot of sense. So relating to Keim mineral paints as examples. So again, natural ingredients with no reliance on the petrochemical industry. Longevity and durability, which means fewer redecoration cycles. Reduced waste at the point of manufacture. Improved light reflectance can actually utilise lower energy lighting, so you're using less power to light the building internally. Breathability can actually help make older, colder rooms feel warmer once walls have dried out, allowing less heating and hence energy to be used. I did have a customer some years ago who had a very damp room in an old listed property. They had a non-breathable paint on the outside. It was a man-made product. They stripped all of that off, applied breathable natural products externally and internally. All of the trapped moisture in the substrate was allowed to escape, so everything started drying out. And they actually said just with doing that, they could actually feel the difference in the inside of the room. It didn't feel damp and it felt warmer, it didn't feel cold. So even that can make a difference. Breakdown of the actual product itself will not harm the environment. So a coated wall externally, as it ages and weathers, anything that comes off of that surface will not harm the environment. Low CO2 in manufacture compared to conventional paint systems. And just touching on a new product we're launching, Keim Innerstar. Again, come and see us at our stand, E68, if you want to know more. This is a one-coat interior paint system. So we're actually reducing resources used with this product because it is a one-coat system. Obviously, there's other things that happen because of this. Reduced labour and access costs. A reduction in transportation of materials. Less washing of decorating tools. The amount of water that could be saved on a large project can be quite significant just by this basic task of washing out brushes and rollers. A reduction in waste produced, and lower embodied carbon impact on an actual project. And I'll just show you, to finish off, a couple of examples where natural paints or Keim paints have been utilised on existing buildings, so we're really utilising the embodied carbon that was already within them. So this is a project called 27 Whitfield Street in London with a client, Stag Architects. The picture on the left there is a little bit out of focus, but hopefully you can just make out the darker areas is actually exposed brickwork. The lighter areas are all render panels. The design brief was to change the building and transform it. All of the glazing was totally changed. Another floor added to the top of the building. Those render panels were actually removed to reveal all of the existing brickwork, which was all in sound condition. So we're taking it back to a bare shell almost. And then it was actually coated with a product called Keim Concrete de Jour, which is a colour wash, Restore Le Jour for brickwork. So it's a pigmented colour wash, highly breathable, it chemically bonds to the brickwork. So this building has been retained, reused, and it looks brand new, to be honest. It's a fantastic looking project, and hats off to Stag Architects. And another one, similar sort of concept, a bit more basic. This is Greenwood House in Chelmsford, 1960s office block, in need of decoration as part of a full refurbishment with a private client. All of that external terracotta cladding was in good sound condition. Rather than rip it all off and reclad the building, it was decided to retain that and basically just clean it and paint it. With a mineral paint system, we achieved a fantastic transformation. So you can change the look and feel of a building quite dramatically with natural products. And we've got many more examples if you wanted to come and see us at our stand, and we can show you some more. So that was me done. Thank you very much. Thanks, Katherine. Thank you.
Thank you, Anton. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yeah, great. Okay, so now is your opportunity for the next 10 minutes to ask some questions of us. Who would like to start? There must be a few.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Underwood. A question for Joe, really, with your variety of timber products. Does each one have to have its own digital footprint, whether it's a BIM model or whatever? Because it strikes me there's obviously some standardization possible within those definitions, which may or may not help your insurers.
Good question that I have to be honest, I don't know the answer to. I mean, the different products obviously have very different uses. Some of them are panel products, some of them are column, beam kind of elements. The project is actually looking more at the kind of project scale rather than looking at the individual products that are used themselves. So I don't know, I'm afraid.
Sorry, you beg the question. Sorry, you beg the question. What is the obstacle that the insurers feel they can't deal with?
There's a number of things really. So the two primary factors are the susceptibility to water and fire damage. So obviously when we're talking about mass timber, we're talking about structural elements. So these are kind of directly substituted for steel and concrete. Obviously the design of the structure has to be considered in a completely different way because timber behaves in a very different way. But yeah, fire and water damage. So so we're talking about things like encapsulating the timber with a fireproof material or a coating, providing sprinklers to the building, avoiding combustible voids. That's something that insurers are not very keen on. Equally, fire brigades as well, because a fire could spread through a building in a void unnoticed. So you can't really just design out concrete and put timber in exactly the same way that you would. And I think a lot of the problem is that insurers are seeing projects coming forward that are doing just that. They're just getting rid of the concrete and putting the timber in the same place in the drawing. And it has to be considered in a completely different way. So yeah, it's primarily fire and water really that insurers are worried about.
Thanks, Joe. I think there was a question there.
Hi, I've got a question for Mark. It's around natural fibres. I've been looking for them in SIP panels, and I've not seen it anywhere. So I wondered if you could comment on that, and also talk about the issues and risks of putting natural fibres in SIPs.
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure if my microphone was working there. I sort of froze for a second. Thanks. We looked at it probably 12 years ago now with a natural foam that we had developed. One of the difficulties you got with SIP panels is that they're sort of joined at the hip with PIR and PUR, and the U values at a specific depth would be different if you incorporated a natural material. You could certainly use a wood fibre. You could essentially get three types of natural fibre insulation. You would have a flexible, so wood flex or sheep's wool. It's thermally bonded. That's too soft, really, for a SIPS panel. Then you've got blown cellulose. Again, you wouldn't get the structural support with that. So then you're into wood fibre. And I have seen prototypes with wood fibre. But it's whether the market would either accommodate a lower U value or a thicker panel. And I think that's probably the biggest obstacle at the minute, is that. But when you're moving forward and looking at a world where embodied carbon is within the fabric's very important, then people hopefully will be willing to accommodate a slightly thicker structure. Because obviously you get the thermal mass as well with that, so it's moving away from that focus on U value. Once the market sees the other benefits of the material, then I think there is room for a wood fibre based SIPS panel.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions? Yep.
All right, my question is for Mark as well. You've talked about the insulation being fire retardant, for example, where you can apply inorganic fire retardants to it. Is it possible to substitute that and replace with naturally fire retardant materials, for example, cork as an example? So instead of coating or spraying it with them fire retardants, which themselves are not very environmentally friendly, so for us to meet in the middle where we get stuff that is actually inherently fire retardant at the same time?
I think the challenge that you face there is the way that combustibility is measured in the fire test. So, recognizing that the sheep's wool has a high ignition temperature compared with cellulose. It's about 600 degrees. Cork has a very good reaction to fire, but the difficulty is that they all contain biogenic carbon. So when you're measuring carbon dioxide through the charring process, it has an impact on the fire test results. So it still won't get you over that hurdle of an A1 or an A2 rating. It's just not possible. But that's not to say that you can't use them. We just need to adopt a risk-based approach to fire safety. Rather than just having a blanket specification that a material must be non-combustible in all the situations. Just in terms of the fire retardants that are added to natural fibres, I mean, there's a spectrum of impacts. So typically you would have sulfates and ammonium phosphate. Admittedly, they're inorganic chemicals, but they're not on the same magnitude of OPs and other organic brominated compounds that would be used in furniture and what have you. I'm not aware of anyone that's treating natural fibre insulation with those materials.
Thanks, Mark. Any other questions? Yes, one at the front. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katherine. I'm a student. I was very impressed with your presentation, Anton, about paint. It's not really something that we discuss in school. And I guess my question is, you talked about the benefits of the paint and how that kind of changed that particular building that you showed at the end. In terms of certification as well for new builds and for retrofits and everything, where does that come in? Like, for example, like BREEAM, does that kind of come in embodied carbon calculations, or?
Just check this is on. I think it's on, yeah. So BREEAM is actually a measurement of VOC content with relation to paints, and we fall well below the limit. So all of our paints are actually BREEAM compliant. We have Nature Plus accreditation as well, which is very, very stringent accreditation and inspection of our paints. It goes through the whole process of where we get our materials, how the products are actually made, etc. It's a very, very stringent process that we have certified for that. So, yeah, I think that answers your question, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, are we at time? Maybe anyone else got a very quick question? No, I've got a question for the audience actually. So if you can raise your hands if you've ever used natural fibre insulation or natural paints. Okay, there's a smattering. So for those who haven't used them, would you consider using them after our talk? Hands up if you would. Well, that's good. That's good to see. Do come and see us on our stand. We'd be happy to talk to you about any of our work and more detail today and tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you.